Welcome back to the Bilge Brew Show. I'm Nate, Navy vet, RN, coffee roaster, and the guy who can talk extraction for 10 minutes while forgetting I already started the kettle.
I'm Mason. I'm here to defend the average person who just wants coffee, not an arts and crafts project with a timer and a gooseneck kettle.
Perfect, because today's topic is pour-over coffee, which somehow became both the simplest thing and a full personality.
It's wild how a cone and some paper turned into a lifestyle.
And what's even better is the origin story isn't glamorous at all. Pour-over gets popular because someone got tired of drinking gritty, sludgy coffee.
So it started as a problem, not a trend.
Exactly. The big turning point is a woman named Melitta Bentz. In 1908, in Dresden, she registered a coffee filter invention with the patent office because coffee back then was often a mess. Grounds everywhere, clogged sieves, bitter sludge.
Okay, that's already cooler than a barista in 2014 told me to buy a V60.
Right, and the funniest part is how she prototyped it. She used blotting paper from her son's school notebook and poked holes in a brass pot.
That's the most real-life invention story ever.
It's pure kitchen problem solving. And that paper filter idea becomes a huge foundation for what we now call pour over.
So pour over, at its core, is just hot water passing through coffee grounds held back by a filter.
Yep. It's percolation brewing. Water moves through the bed of coffee and the filter catches the grounds.
And paper filter changes the whole game because it gives you a cleaner cup.
Exactly. Paper filters trap more sediment and a lot of oils, which makes the coffee taste clearer and lighter on the tongue than metal filter methods like French press.
So that's why pour-over people talk about clarity, like they're describing a diamond.
Yes, they're not wrong, they're just emotionally invested.
Okay, so Melitta starts the paper filter era. Then what?
Then we get a bunch of iconic pour-over devices over the decades. One of the biggest design history stars is the Chemex. It was designed and patented in 1941 by Dr. Peter Schlumbohm.
The hourglass one that looks like science class.
That's the one. And it's literally treated as design. The Chemex is in MoMA's collection.
So pour-over is museum-worthy.
At least that brewer is. And Schlumbohm wasn't just a coffee guy. Chemex's own site says he had over 300 patents. He was a full-time inventor who applied chemistry and physics to everyday objects.
That explains why Chemex feels like someone engineered it, not just manufactured it.
Exactly. It's functional and pretty, which is why it became an icon.
Now hit me with a wild, obscure fact about pour-over that most people don't know.
Here's one. The V60 story is tied to lab equipment. Hario, one of the most famous pour-over brands, was founded in 1921 as a manufacturer of laboratory glassware.
So pour-over has science roots in a very literal way.
Yes, and Hario's own write-up says the origin of their cone concept involved using a familiar Erlenmeyer funnel and folded filter paper found in the company, basically repurposing lab shapes for coffee.
That's actually awesome. A coffee cone basically came out of what's already in the lab.
Exactly. And the V60 name comes from the 60-degree cone angle. The V60 was introduced in 2004 and took off fast, especially as specialty coffee grew.
So modern pour-over culture is older than TikTok, but newer than my grandparents.
That's a fair timeline.
Okay, let's simplify what pour-over does well. Why do people love it?
Because it's clean, repeatable, and it lets you taste the coffee itself, origin character, processing character, roast decisions, without a lot of extra texture getting in the way.
So it's the method for people who want to taste differences between coffees.
Exactly. It's like switching from watching a movie on a scratched DVD to watching it in HD.
That is a strong analogy, and I hate that it's accurate.
Now here's where people mess up. They think pour over is just pour water and done. But it's sensitive to a few basics.
Let me guess. Grind size and pouring like a maniac.
Yes. Grind too fine and it stalls and gets harsh. Grind too coarse and it rushes and tastes thin. And if you dump water like you're putting out a fire, you get uneven extraction.
So, what's the normal human version of a pour-over method?
Here's the simplest way to think about it. Use water that's hot but not violently boiling. Wet the grounds first so everything is evenly soaked, then pour steadily in circles and keep a consistent pace until you hit your target cup size.
I like that because it's do the basics and not draw a spiral with the precision of a surgeon.
Exactly. Pour over rewards consistency more than flair.
Okay, now you promised history, but also promised the coffee origin tie-in. This is where Colombia enters the chat, right?
Yes, because pour over is one of the best ways to show off a clean, balanced, this is what the bean tastes like profile. And Colombia is one of the most famous origins for that kind of cup.
Give me the Colombia history in a way that doesn't sound like a textbook.
All right. The earliest written testimony people point to for coffee in Colombia goes back to around 1730, tied to a Jesuit priest named José Gumilla.
So coffee shows up early, but it doesn't become Colombia equals coffee overnight.
Right. Colombia's first coffee exports are often dated to 1835, and from there the industry grows into what the world knows today.
That's a long runway.
It is. And there's even a popular legend that a priest named Francisco Romero told parishioners to plant coffee trees as penance, which is either the most productive confession in history or the best coffee myth ever.
That is hilarious. Say 3 Hail Marys and plant 20 seedlings.
Exactly.
When does Colombia become organized about coffee as a national identity?
A major milestone is 1927 when Colombian coffee growers created the Federación Nacional de Cafeteros, the FNC, to represent growers and improve their well-being.
So the farmers basically built their own national structure.
Yes, and that organization becomes a huge part of why Colombian coffee gets marketed as a distinct thing worldwide.
That leads us to the mustache guy, doesn't it?
Juan Valdez, yes. And the fun, obscure fact here is, the timeline gets a little fuzzy, depending on who you ask. Some sources say the icon took shape in 1959 when the FNC commissioned an ad agency to create a fictional farmer character.
And other sources say 1960.
Exactly. The Juan Valdez brand site says the character was created in 1960.
So either late 50s or 1960. But the point is, Colombia built one of the most recognizable origin brands ever.
Yes. And that branding helped consumers understand 100% Colombian as its own category.
Now give me one more weird Colombia coffee fact that people don't expect.
Colombia is one of the few places where coffee trees can grow year-round, and the country often has 2 harvests per year. And because the terrain is so rugged, coffee transport can still involve mules and jeeps.
That's such a vibe. Third wave pour over in your kitchen connects to mule hauling coffee down a mountain.
Exactly. There's real work behind that clean cup.
And UNESCO even recognized Colombia's coffee landscape, right?
Yes. UNESCO inscribed the coffee cultural landscape of Colombia as a World Heritage Site.
So, coffee isn't just an export. It's culture and geography and history.
Exactly.
All right. Now bring it back to pour-over. Why is Colombian coffee a good match for pour-over brewing specifically?
Because pour-over emphasizes clarity and balance, and Colombian coffees are often known for a clean profile that shows well when the brew is filtered and controlled.
So it's like the brewer is giving the origin a microphone.
That's a good way to put it.
This is where you do the subtle product plug, isn't it?
Subtle and practical. If you're doing pour-over and you want a coffee that fits the method naturally, our Admiral's brew is a single origin Colombia, and it's built for that clean, straightforward pour-over lane.
So you're not saying this is the only coffee. You're saying this is a good tool match.
Exactly. Pour-over is picky about coffee quality and roast choices. A Colombia single origin tends to play nice because it can be balanced and easy to read in the cup.
What does easy to read mean for the listener?
It means you can pick out the structure of the coffee without guessing. It won't feel like everything is covered by sludge, heavy oils, or grit.
And if someone messes up their pour-over, what's the fastest fix?
Slow down your pour, tighten consistency, and check grind. If it tastes hollow and watery, you're probably too coarse or too fast. If it tastes harsh and dry, you're probably too fine or too slow.
I like that because it's just 2 knobs, grind and flow.
Exactly. Don't make it complicated.
Now, I want one more wild origin pour-over fact before we wrap. Give me something I can repeat at a party and sound smart.
All right. Pour-over's biggest leap, paper filtration, comes from a kitchen hack in 1908 using school notebook blotting paper.
Then one of the most iconic pour-over brewers, the Chemex, gets patented in 1941 by a chemist inventor with over 300 patents and ends up in MoMA.
And one of the most famous modern drippers, the V60, gets introduced in 2004 by a company that started in 1921 making lab glass.
That is a perfect 3 fun facts chain.
It's a clean arc, kitchen fix, design icon, modern specialty tool.
All right, wrap it up like I'm about to brew.
Pour-over coffee is basically controlled filtration, hot water through coffee, filtered clean, and it got its modern foundation from Melitta Bentz's 1908 paper filter invention.
It evolves into icons like the Chemex, patented in 1941 and recognized as design history, and modern classics like the V60 introduced in 2004.
And if you want a coffee that fits pour-over's clean style, a Colombian single origin is a strong pick. Colombia's coffee story runs from early 1700s records and 1835 exports to the FNC's founding in 1927, and even a UNESCO-recognized coffee landscape.
And for us, that's Admiral's Brew, single origin Colombia, simple match, no drama.
That's it. Keep your pour steady, keep your grind sane, and we'll see you next time on the Bilge Brew Show.